All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the VPYA podcast. This is a podcast coming out of VantagePoint Church, specifically our young adults ministry, where we hope and desire to give you some valuable content, not just to, throw in with the rest of the noise in your life, but we want to give you guys something that adds value, that, we want to bring conversations to the table that people are actually already having conversations about, and just, bring in scripture, bring in biblical principles, and maybe a little bit of our own take, but hopefully much more of God than our own take. If you don't know me, my name is Christian Alvarez. I'm one of the pastors here at the church. We got my lovely bride with me today. You want to tell them your name? And then over there, we've got Matt. You want to introduce you guys yourselves?
I'm Matt Sanchez, and this is my wife to my left, your right, however you're watching this.
I'm Sarah.
So this week we are changing things up a little bit. This is our relationship episode.
Yes.
So, that was kind of what your guys' message was on this past Tuesday. If you guys don't know yet, the way that this podcast is kind of structured is on Tuesday nights. Every other Tuesday, we have a service here at VPYA where we dive into the Word. We tackle, different topics that pertain to young adults in our everyday life. And this past Tuesday, Matt and Sarah were preaching a little bit. So you guys want to tell us a little bit about what your sermon was on?
Yeah. So this past Tuesday we were actually, like you said, talking about relationships, and we were talking in the sense of the differences between a worldly relationship and a godly relationship, and what those two things look like, as opposed to one another, and opposites, and just the point of which one can actually lead you to as well. That was some of the things that we talked about. What were like some other things that we covered? Yeah,
we went over the foundations, and so we went through a couple different scriptures for that. We went through expectations and connection, and in connection we talked about the emotional connection and the physical connection.
It was really fun.
Definitely.
That sounds good. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
How was it being able to preach a little bit with your spouse?
That was so fun.
Honestly, it was a blast, especially because it was something that we had, I feel like, the time that we've known each other, have a lot of experience in, because we lived on both sides. We once started at the worldly side, and then now we're in the godly, so we're able to see that change in our relationship. And I think I don't know, sometimes we have told each other, I think we went through all this for a reason, so that way we can let others know, one, if they are going through this, or two, to try to avoid this. And I think that was like a huge thing that we've actually been talking about doing. So when we did this on Tuesday, I was like, oh, this finally it's coming to fruition. Like finally, God put us in this place where we could actually help others through what we went through.
Definitely.
I love that.
Praise God. That's awesome. Okay, so hit me with this. How long have you guys been together, dating and married? And like, kind of, how did you meet in the first place?
So we've been together, it's going to be 13 years this year. So we dated 3 years before we got married. And then we are going to be celebrating our 9-year wedding anniversary this year. In
Let's
June.
go.
So it's exciting.
Time flies.
For sure. So do you want to share?
And how we met, I'm not sure if some of you remember, there are very few of them out there now, a restaurant called Claim Jumper. We worked there.
Yeah,
that place, oh my gosh.
I always think of the one over by Knott's in Buena
Park.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you? No,
I
you didn't work at that one. Got it. That place was so good. Unfortunately, it got bought by a new owner, and like the quality started going downhill. But when we were there, it was at its top. So I worked there as a server, and then she had recently gotten hired as a host, and that's how we met. The host and server story, and I've shared this before, but I used the wrong word the last time when I described this, but she was the one that was pursuing me in the sense of, because, usually, I mean, that's why I love too that we're going through relationships, because we were going to talk a little bit something about the roles later, but the guy is usually the one who approaches the girl and like tries to woo her and like, hey, like, let me take you out on a date. But it was flipped this time around. I was caught off guard, and she was the one that started complimenting me and stuff, and I was like, what do I do? And I froze, and I went to the back of our restaurant, and I just like stood there for a while, and I was like trying to gather my thoughts of what just happened right now. And I think that's kind of what won me over, because I'm like, man, like this girl knows what she wants, she's determined, and she's already gotten it. I just gotta not let her know that yet. But yeah, that's how we met. We met at Claim Jumper.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go Sarah.
Go Claim Jumper.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. I know.
Thank you,
seriously,
Claim
yeah.
Jumper.
Seriously. I wish it was still there, but
I know. It sucks. A lot of our places that we were dating have all closed down, so it's so sad.
That's what happens with age.
Yeah.
We're seeing it more and more, man.
Yeah.
That's so funny that, you bring up the fact that Sarah was pursuing you, because in our story...
It's very similar.
Oh,
even in
did not know
timeline
this.
wise, it's a little similar. I mean, we started dating in high school, but we just celebrated our 12-year dating anniversary
That's awesome.
this week.
Got together 2011.
Yeah.
This week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
I asked her to be my girlfriend the day before Valentine's Day.
Hey.
So
And it's
we
genius.
could combine.
Yeah. That's also because, like...
Smart planning.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you are not the kind of person who's like, oh, the day before, that means I get 2 holidays. But you're just like happy with, combining it into one. Yeah, makes my job a little bit easier.
Yeah. Where did you guys meet? I don't think I know. I don't even think I know much of your guys' story, so I want to hear your story too.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
I don't think we know anything about each other. We've been in ministry together for a while now.
Oh, that's truth right there. Man.
Who are you?
Yeah, who is this guy, dude?
That's so funny. We actually met in a youth group. So I was going to a church out in Chino for a really long time, and his neighbor came to my youth group, and so I knew his neighbor pretty well. And we one night had a lock-in, and so his neighbor brought him and another friend to the lock-in, and so that's where we met. But it's actually really funny because if anyone who's like grown up in the church knows, and like even now, honestly, young adult ministry, like as soon as there's a new person, like all of the girls or all the guys are like, new person,
Fresh blood.
ultimate, like already have a crush on them. And so I already had a crush on a guy in our youth group, and so when he came in, all the girls were like, oh, he's so cute, he's so new. And I was like,
So
oh,
new.
So new.
he's so new.
That was the only thing I had going for me.
I'm telling you, that's like church
looks,
culture.
That's
New.
I was just be there.
Just being you, bro. Like you already brought
That's
it.
the key in
Yes,
church.
it is.
Go to a new church.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
And so I was like, I have no fear. I have no stake in the game because like I like someone else. Like I'll go talk to him. And so I did. I went and introduced myself to him and his friend, and we hit it off like pretty quickly. We liked a lot of the same things, and so we became fast friends. But
Yeah, and then I helped her work up the courage to tell that guy that she liked him. They dated for like a hot minute, and then I just kind of stuck around, I was new long enough. And then and then when things didn't work out with her and the other guy, I was still new. And so
Hey.
and then a whole lot else happened.
Yeah.
Some mistakes were made, some stupidities occurred, mostly on my part.
I mean, we were 15, so
Yeah, man.
that's gonna
Oh
happen.
wow, 15.
Yeah, so we got together
so
when I
cool.
was 16 and he was 15. So
That's so cool.
But now we've been married, coming up on 7 years this year.
7
Yeah, it's
years.
about 6.5 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so, we've learned a lot through the ups and the downs.
Yeah.
We've had our fair share of trials and tribulations when it comes to marriage, and when it comes to just relationship. And obviously, like, even just getting to the point of marriage takes a lot of work too, you know, just getting through the dating part. I mean, I remember, especially like coming out of high school, right? So much life change happens in those first few years out of high school going into college, like your first taste of freedom. And I remember, you know, we had a lot of just butting heads of, hey, you know, like what does our relationship look like now with this freedom, and what does our relationship look like now with you know, so many new people coming into our lives and new friends and, you know, new everything. And so yeah, we had a lot to work through, but it's a blessing, because like you guys were saying, you know, with just having gone through all that God has taken you through, on the other side of it, now you're able to kind of have some wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? That you don't really get wisdom until you go through things that provide wisdom.
Exactly. Hands on.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that, you know, this podcast, between talking through our personal experiences and talking through, you know, just pursuing God together, that we can actually bring something of value to the table.
Yeah.
I was telling Jess this, and I think I talked about it on the last podcast that we were on. I think I try to mention it every time, but we are by no means experts or professionals.
Yes.
Listen
to this.
Yeah. Actually, Sarah is.
Kinda is.
She
has a degree.
I do.
Yeah. So Sarah is a counselor. So she actually is our professional voice.
She's actually going to interview us today. This is what's actually going to go down.
Yeah.
I am not in that therapy moment right now, so
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we're really not coming from hey, we've written a ton of books and, you know, have spoken around the world on these subjects. Yeah. We're really coming from a perspective of, hey, we're just people who love Jesus, who love the local church, and want to, like I keep saying, bring value to the table, and, you know, continue the conversation, point people back to Jesus constantly. So, okay, so we wanted to kind of get into some of the topics that we talked about a little bit on Tuesday. And I don't know if we mentioned this yet, but one of the things you'll find when working on a message is that you produce so much content in your message, right? You're doing so much research, you're taking so many notes, and you're like, oh man, this is good, and I got to bring in this verse, and I got to mention this. And then you sit down to actually like time out everything, and you're like, I have 3 hours worth of content. I only have 30 minutes to preach. Yes. And so I made a joke to Matt and Sarah on Tuesday that this podcast is nice because it's kind of like the graveyard where all of the ideas that were killed off from the sermon get to come back to life. This is the resurrection. This is the resurrection pod. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But we're bringing those ideas back to life and talking about them here. So one of the things that we want to talk about was dating, right? And really kind of the question of dating isn't mentioned in the Bible. It was not a thing in first century Judea. And so how do we, like, dating, it's a part of our cultural moment right now. So how do we date well in light of Christ and in light of trying to be the best followers of him that we can be? How do we date without making some of the, you know, mistakes that kind of the whole world is getting caught up in? So yeah, you guys got any insight on that?
Well, I feel like we've spoken already. I want to hear something from Jess.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Not to put her on the spot.
Can you rephrase the question? Because I'm trying to think.
Totally. Okay, so well, I guess let's start with, what does dating look like today?
Okay.
That's
from like a worldly perspective, or like a godly, or both, or
I think both.
Okay.
Maybe I can kind of even preface it with this of what are some influences that you see in culture that have affected and dictated how we date and how we view dating and how we view marriage today. What are the biggest things that influence how we view those things today?
Probably television, like a lot of reality dating TV shows, a lot of movies, and just regular TV shows, I think, have a lot of influence on us and what we think the world is doing. And even so far to push it as causing the world to be that way, because that's what we intake, that's what we what we're seeing on a daily basis or whatever. And so that's what we think dating is like, you know, hooking up with multiple people, or dating casually and like, you know, going on multiple dates a week or whatever it is, or even like when it comes to like The Bachelor, dating 10 people at a time. I've never watched it. I don't know how many people are on there.
we tried. Seen it. Yeah.
We tried that one season. I think the guy's name was like Matthew or something like that.
Oh,
Not this
course.
Matthew.
Of course.
It's always
Come on, man.
That's really how we met.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Yeah. But I think there's this like cultural norm that dating should be shopping around. It should be almost treating people like they're an accessory to you, and you have to try them all on to see if they fit.
I like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think in addition to that, it's also, you think about like Disney movies growing up, you know, it's watching these kind of fairy tale type movies, this Prince Charming and princesses, and also giving the complete opposite of that, of this perfection as a relationship, or, you know, at a young age too. You know, you just kind of grow up thinking, or you think about some of the movies back then too. It's like what was it? The jocks and the cheerleaders and the pursuing of each other, and you know, there's just so many different narratives that are in movies too, that you get at such a young age when your brain's still developing, that you're just not realizing that it's planting these ideas of your expectations of a relationship.
Can we talk about this for a minute? What are some differences? So we minister to a wide age range, right? 18 to 30 somethings is a pretty big age group. And so much life change happens in that season. I know that dating looks different for an 18-year-old fresh out of high school and a 32-year-old who is established in their career, you know, has a degree. What are some of the differences between the 18-year-old versus the 32-year-old who are, you know, both in the dating scene, but are they dating the same way? Are they you know, what are some maybe some things that they can kind of trip up on, or some maybe pitfalls that they might fall into?
I think as far as, you know, I'll speak for the elders, because I'm 34, so you know, I'm getting up there. I think as you get older and you've gone through a lot of life experience, life changes in regards to dating, you start to become kind of like just wanting to just go straight for, I guess, the sexual, physical part of a dating relationship. You know, we're talking, you know, how you brought up television, you brought up, you know, the movies and things like that. I think one of the big things right now, a lot of people that I know that, you know, these applications like Tinder and Bumble,
like Hinge,
like all of these are basically just ways for you to just hook up with each other. And I think that's where a lot of the older generations are kind of falling into, because they've done the dating where I'm gonna take this girl on a date, we're gonna go somewhere, this now it's just like I just want to cut to the chase and just get something selfishly that I want. I think that can be something like I don't even want to use the word seasoned, because you're not technically seasoned if that's what your mentality is, of just wanting to just go straight for you know, physical pleasure. But I think maybe run down, maybe just kind of over it. You know, I haven't found anyone yet, so I'm never gonna find anybody. So I'm just gonna continue just dating and just, you know, aimlessly just hooking up with people. I think maybe if you're in that state, it could just kind of like you are who you are, and I haven't changed since, so I'm just gonna keep going where I'm going right now. I mean, that's from my view of what I've seen. If someone is trying to actually change that and be like, hey, I actually don't want to just aimlessly date, I really want to change it up, I think you have to put yourself in different environments now, because you're not going to find someone at a club, you're not going to find someone at a bar. And if you think that's where that person that you're in a sense not so much looking for, but you think you'll find an equal there, it's not going to happen, because that interest of where you guys met, I think, is going to tell a lot of what the relationship is going to turn into, or what the relationship is going to be like, so yeah.
I think kind of on the other side of that too, somebody who's dating that's older, you think that they also could end up settling too, because they're older. And so they have dated so much and they haven't found the right person, and so then they end up just settling and just compromising some of the things that they want in a partner.
It's true.
Yeah, that's super good. Matt, something that you said that I really appreciated your insight on was just how if you're wanting to change, you got to go to different places, right? If you go to the same well, if you're on the same apps, right, reaching out to the same people, you know, kind of going through the same thing, and if you're sick of it, like, man, you've kind of got to figure out some way to change that, right? And I don't know entirely what that looks like to try to change that, but yeah, that's a great point. If you go to the same well, you're gonna keep getting the same stuff every single time.
Yeah, a cousin of mine, I was just gonna chime a little bit more. I'm not gonna take it long, because a cousin of mine's like, man, dude, like, he's like, I considered you as like, he was referring me to like our family, like our entire family. He's like, I always tell everyone, you're the last generation that found a good girl. He's like, there's no hope for the rest of us. He's like, where did you, like, how did you meet? Like, where did you find her? And I'm like, dude, I again, like, I put myself in a different position. I told him, I was like, you're not going to find, I'm not trying to brag about my wife, but I was like, you're not going to find a girl like Sarah at a bar, dude. You're not. And you got to put yourself in a different location. And I think that's self-consciously, I think that's probably where I got it from. Because as you're talking, I'm like, where did that come from? I didn't even know I had that knowledge, but it's probably because of when my cousin shared that with me. I'm like, man, like, and I told him, I was like, dude, don't think that I'm the last generation. I was like, there's still plenty of women out there, dude, that are looking for a true relationship and not just looking to have fun,
Yeah, that's great insight, man. Jess, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you've seen with, I mean, we both work in youth ministry. We've been working in youth ministry for a long time. Some might say too long, but we've got a lot of experience, when it comes to high school students and, coming fresh out of high school and kind of the relationships that they go through. So what have you seen, just, some pitfalls or some maybe dangers that lie in dating at an early age?
I think two major things come to mind. One being that they really haven't matured enough yet to like actually enter a relationship that they want to go to marriage. Like if they're seeking a relationship that's going to go to marriage, but in reality they haven't done enough work on themselves to even be a good partner to the other person. Like they may find the other person, but they haven't done enough work on themselves to be open to that relationship going to marriage, and even just being we got married young, and so I feel like awkward talking about that, saying like, don't get married young, like you're not mature enough, but in reality, like where we were when we first started dating versus where we were when we got married versus where we are now are like three different people. Totally. Because we chose to keep on growing, which is I think what everyone should strive to do. But when we are 18 or 19 or 20, I think sometimes we think we've got it figured out, and we almost feel like old then. We're like, we're not in high school, so we're old. And so like, especially in the church, need a wife now or need a husband now, because I'm not getting any younger. You're the youngest still. And so I think a big issue I see in younger couples is the fact that they don't take responsibility for who they are and like figuring out who they are before entering a relationship and trying to become one with another person. And I think you lose a lot of identity in that too, because you put so much identity in your relationship that you have lost yourself as an individual person.
Can I chime into that before you hit on your second point? I would honestly say that was probably one of the biggest points of tension for us when we were dating fresh out of high school, and even to the point of when we were ready to get married. I mean, we got engaged. I was 19 and you were 20, almost 21. Or no, you were 21. But still, like that, that's very young. We did not know who we were apart from each other, and so. Like everything was kind of through this lens of us already being one, even though we weren't married yet. We were still two individual people. And I feel like in a lot of ways, your marriage is almost kind of stronger when you know who you are separately and still can come together. I see that a lot too. And I think, people can at least learn a little bit from our experience and the tensions that we had to go through with that.
Yeah, for sure. And not to say that it's not worth it to work through it with someone, but it is definitely difficult. And I don't think a lot of people have the patience to sit and work on a relationship while you're also working on yourself. And nor should anyone ever have to. It's enough work to work on yourself, let alone work on a relationship while you're working on yourself. I think my second point was just the fact that, at least in Christian culture, I see a lot of young people just wanting to get married for sex, just feeling like this is my gateway to sex and not knowing that the bigger picture of what marriage is, and what God calls us to in marriage, and just kind of cheapening marriage, I guess, as a gateway to sex.
Yeah, definitely.
Facts. Yeah.
I'm trying to find it right now, but there's this verse. It's 1 Corinthians. Here we go. 1 Corinthians 7 verse 9. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion.
I highlighted that verse in my Bible at 18.
Me too.
And I was like, see, God says to get married right now. I have no idea what any of the rest of that verse says. I couldn't tell you what's before or after it.
You know what's hilarious about that? I did not realize it at all back when we were in high school, but verse 8 literally says, now to the unmarried and widows I say this, it is good for them to remain unmarried as I am, but if they cannot control themselves, let them marry.
He literally says it's better to be single. But if you have to, do you really want to be a part of but if you have to?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Oh man. All right. So we talked a little bit about dating. What about marriage? I think kind of you guys, as you were talking a little bit about, dating in your 30s and, even maybe a little bit in your late 20s, it can kind of begin to lead to this point where you become jaded about marriage and maybe give up hope, give up desire to be married, right? Because at that point, like you guys were saying, you've become your fully self-sufficient individual self, right? And if you're getting by till that point just fine, then there's no longer that need for someone else to, be on that journey with you. So why get married if the casual hookups are fine, or why get married when, the dating occasionally is fine? What I feel like it kind of speaks to this idea that we have really lost the purpose for marriage. So now is kind of when we get into a little bit more biblical theology and biblical principles. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about why is there marriage? Why would someone want, or why should someone want to get married?
Want to take this one?
Okay. Well, we talked a little bit in our message. Sorry, I'm having issues here. A little bit of our message about how the Adam and Eve and how they joined together, and how God brought these two people together to do life together. The purpose of part of Adam's purpose was to go and take care of all the animals and take care of the Garden of Eden. And so he basically brought Eve over to help him in that, but have the same goal. And so I talked a little bit about like the word helper and things like that in our message, how it's really meant to be a partner to be able to do this in life, right? Like to be able to take care of the Garden of Eden together. And so you think about that concept of it takes two people to be able to take care of this task, take care of this purpose that God has called them to do. And so marriage stems, that since it's right in the beginning of the Bible, it starts with right after God created everything. It's just showing just how vital it is to be able to have somebody else there with you to help you along with God's purpose. And so that's probably the start of it, right? Like, okay, we look down to what the Bible says about marriage, and then throughout the Bible it talks about just different people and married and coming together. And so I think, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
One of the verses that I think we mentioned was Genesis 2:24, and it reads, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife." I think part of that is, marriage is something to also, in a healthy way, disconnect from your mother and father. Because I did it. When I was younger, I moved out of the house just by myself, and I lived on my own for a while, but I can definitely say that's probably was not the healthiest times of my life, because I was by myself and I was just like, man, I'm going to just do whatever I want. And that's when I was very heavily into alcohol, because I was like, I got no more supervision and I'm old enough now to go to these places. And I think it's, definitely don't stay at home with mom and dad until you're like 50, at least help them out, pay rent or help around the house. But I think, if you are planning on leaving the house, like make sure that you have the right reasons for this. Like, if you're going for school, like most definitely, of course, have that experience. But I think one of the major reasons to leave is because you're going to now become one with your wife, or the woman that you married. And so that way you can now build that family. And because you've already grown into your mother and father's family, but now it's time for you to create your own. And that's that whole multiply and make children kind of aspect of marriage that God wanted us to do. I think that's something to kind of keep in mind as well.
Yeah, to touch on that a little, I feel like too, just knowing the differences in like time periods and stuff, like we do have a lot more time where I think it's acceptable to be single now, because we're not being married off by our parents at like 14 or whatever.
Seriously.
So like there's kind of this awkward time in our lives that we have now that I don't think they had back then. But I think an important thing of what you were saying was to just always have community, whether that's like with your family community, or if it's like with roommates or something, but just to not be alone, because when we're alone, like that's when the enemy can attack us most. We're at our most vulnerable. And so if that looks like moving straight from your parents to marriage, great. If it looks like you moving from your parents to in with roommates or at college or whatever, like just finding that community in whatever season you're in, and like helping that move you along until you're ready for marriage.
And it also depends on the type of community, the people that you have, because you think about, you were the type of friends that you have that all drink together, and so it's normal and it's not a big deal. And even me, like I was right there with him, so I can't. Like I said, we lived the worldly lifestyle when we were dating.
I would have like loved for you guys to just see a glimpse of what Sarah used to be, because she is such a transformed woman now because of the grace of God. But man,
thank you, God.
Definitely would not recognize her.
That's a whole other podcast.
Let's dig in.
But I think that the community that you were talking about is having that those people around you that can lift you up and help you be walking on the same line, like be a better person and bring you closer to God.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, that will provide more insight on you as a person.
Yeah.
And be able to help your relationship with God before you even meet your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your community should always be making you better. So, you know,
Yes.
like when you're younger, your parents are making you into a little adult, and they're making you better in that way. And your friends need to make you better as a young adult, and your spouse should make you better in marriage.
Yes.
What's the
I love that.
the verse? Bad company corrupts good character. I think that's like
I think one of the things that I really wanted to touch on, Jess and I, we are in a marriage small group that meets every Monday, and this past Monday, one of the things that we were talking about, we're going through this through this book on marriage by Francis Chan right now, and it's called, it's super good, super good. It's called You and Me Forever, and it's this idea of you know, just getting down to a biblical center of what is marriage. And I think one of the things that our society, our culture has really lost is, what is marriage meant to be? Because Francis Chan does such a great job at really illustrating this fact that marriage is all about Christ. Like you mentioned it, Sarah, that the Bible literally opens with a wedding, right? That Adam and Eve in the second chapter of the Bible, we see them, you know, being united in front of God, right? They're in front of their creator, that there is this holy and special union that they come together for. And then the beautiful thing about scripture and you know, just being able to see kind of the key themes and things throughout God's word, is that when you take a look at the end of the Bible in Revelation chapter 19, you see this other marriage. You see this other wedding between Christ and his church. And so it's this idea that, man, marriage is not just about, you know, two people signing a contract. No, it's covenant, right? It's biblical. It's something that is like when they you know, do the by the power invested in me by the state of California and God, like this state of California should be like 8-point font. God should be like 36, right? Like God is the one that matters so much more in that conversation. And I think that if you live your life indifferent towards God, marriage does not mean a thing to you. That's why when we take a look at shows like Love is Blind, and this idea of, hey, you're gonna go through this love experiment, you're going to talk with strangers, and then at the end of that experiment, you're going to marry them. And then you're going to go through the honeymoon phase, and, you know, you're going to go through all of these things. And then at the end of that, like, you're, you know, going to decide if you want to stay with them or not. But the weird thing about that to me is like, no, you don't decide after you get married. You decide before you get married. Because when you get married, it's not just between you and the other person. It's literally, it's between you and all the rest of the world, saying that this relationship is a symbol representing Christ's love for his church. And if we get this wrong, then it's showing the rest of the world, man, that you know, Christ's love for the church is easily broken, is conditional. And so, we just, I want, you know, whoever's listening to really just understand. I was talking about our marriage group because one of the things that we were going through in the book just opened my eyes to how little I understood about marriage when we got married. And I told our group, I said, I wish we had held off looking back now, because I wish I had understood it. I wish that even on our wedding day that I was able to get in front of all of our guests there and just preach the gospel, right? Because that's what our marriage is supposed to be. It's a proclamation of the gospel. It's Christ loves you so much.
I can't recommend that book enough. Like, we're only 2 chapters in, and like he has yet to even touch on like marriage as much as he's talked about our relationship with God first. I think I have it up. Hold on. Oh, nope, that's the Bible. I will get to that. Where is it?
I think Sarah and Matt might have even used one of the quotes from that book.
Oh, really?
On Tuesday.
Yeah. It says, without the Spirit of God, it doesn't matter how healthy your view of marriage is or how badly you want it. A dead spouse cannot conjure up a living marriage.
Let's go.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, that's his whole, like, the first 2 chapters is just all about like our relationship with God first. That needs to be healthy first. And then that will be shown in our relationship with each other.
Yes.
Now,
so good.
For our listeners, is this a book that can be found on Amazon or where?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the Kindle version.
Perfect. Yeah, maybe we could post the link or something somewhere.
Totally. We're not getting paid for it.
No, we're not. This is not an endorsement or anything.
This is
we just really like Francis.
It's just a killer book that helps build a really good theology of what marriage is actually all about. And so
love it.
There's another book Megan actually recommended. It's called Loveology. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's a really good book. I've listened to the audio for a while, and I was coming home and was like, they said this and it was great and all this stuff. Just trying to build that foundation. But I love good books about marriage or about relationships. It's just, it learns so much, and just the biblical aspect of it. So good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I feel like I kind of got on my soapbox and preached about marriage a little bit more than I meant to.
But you're doing facts.
Yes. It was so good.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just like seasons where there's certain topics where you just get started and you're like, somebody better stop me, because I ain't stopping anytime soon.
Like me and Sarah on pockets.
Yes.
Before pre-pod, we were talking about pockets and the fact that girls' jeans just don't have pockets. Yeah, it's insanity.
So small. I don't understand.
We won't get back into
it. Yes, we won't. Another day.
I understand.
All right, so there's a couple other topics that we wanted to touch on. One of them was this idea of physical intimacy, because if you look around at our world, man, I think it's fair to say that we, especially in Western culture, probably pretty much worldwide at this point, we are obsessed with sex, right? I don't have the exact stat in front of me, but there's a ton of really good research that's online if you guys want to look into it. There's this organization called Fight the New Drug that I really respect and I really recommend. They're a nonprofit, non-legislative, and non-religious organization that really is just trying to, give all of the scientific facts, all of the research that's being done on the harmful effects of pornography. And really, I feel like that's kind of one of the things that we've seen like a huge spike just over the past 30 years, right? That with the invention of the internet and with the invention of the smartphone and, just our lives are ran through social media and ran through just technological streams constantly, that it's gotten to the point where pornography has just kind of seeped its way into every corner of culture at this point. So much so to the point where the pornography, industry is like I think it might be $1 trillion at this point. I know it's like at least like a crazy amount of $1 billion, way too much. I think the last statistic I saw was somewhere around it was greater than the NFL, the MLB, and the NBA combined.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah. The like 3 top sports leagues in all of America, and the porn industry makes more than all of those combined.
Wow. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. And it just goes to show again, like I said, like we live in a sex obsessed culture. And so can you guys talk to us a little bit about how does that influence? How does that have an influence on dating and marriage and just kind of the young adult life?
Yeah.
Well, I can speak from a past addiction. I was addicted to pornography. I used to watch pornography. There was a point in my life where
Back at the day.
Tall tale. I used to watch pornography almost on a daily basis. And it's weird because it came to the point where there was not even real intention of watching. It's just like, I'm bored, I'm just gonna watch some pornography. And it definitely, you know, disrupted my view of what sex should actually be, you know. And I think also too, at an early age, I think sex is a big deal, or it's something that everyone wants to be a part of. It could have to do a lot of how you grew up, especially in a, I mean, I'm gonna only speak for men. Once again, if I let you guys down, let me know. But you know, we're at a young age, we're like trying to get the most women, or trying to get the most, you know, body count is what they call it now, and because it values our name, or it makes like, man, like this guy gets so many girls, like I want to be like this dude. And for some reason, I don't know where and why that became such a value to a man, to have that aspect of the more women he gets, the higher ranked he is, you know, as amongst a group of men. And
yeah, you've even got this idea of like a trophy wife,
exactly,
right? Like that you have this woman that you can show off to be like, man, like look at the kind of girls that I'm getting, right? And it's all just like this egotistical thing.
Yeah,
and it's not healthy.
It's not, man. It's funny. I literally, what you just said right now, I had told Sarah that a few days ago, that it's not even about the actual connection you have with the woman that you're with. It's more of how good she can look, and it's a reflection on how like, it's like either, you know, like, man, either that guy, you know, has, you know, this, or he has money, or he's just, you know, a really really good guy is not even one of the options right now. But yeah,
really good guys aren't
getting
in those relationships.
Yeah, they finish last. Yeah, so, and even sometimes, you know, you can look at pornography in the sense of like, this is going to be my teacher of how to have sex. And again, man, pornography is just, it's a make-believe world, guys. I highly suggest that if you are struggling with it, you know, you could contact, you know, me if you want to. You know, personally, I could, you know, try to talk to you on some things, like to try to stray away from that. But yeah, it's definitely a toxic and dangerous thing to have in your life. Yeah.
And CR is really good about addressing pornography.
Oh yeah.
It's something that helped. Even you were talking from a male's perspective, but it's also, I know women that really struggled with pornography too, and masturbation, and how that has affected their life. For us, I mean, when I found out that you struggled with that, I think I immediately went to the internalizing of that means I'm not good enough because you're looking at that. And that means I'm, you know, I immediately went to like, this is an issue between us, not an issue that you're struggling with. When really it's something completely separate from me. Like, it's you mentioned addiction, it's your own. It doesn't matter what I looked like, it doesn't matter what I did, and, you know, or anything like that. Because I think at the time when you had told me, we were actually having sex in our dating relationship. And so at the time I thought, wait, like that means I need to be better. I need to fulfill this, that what he's seeing, or but really, like, it has nothing to do with the other person.
I was already addicted before I even met you.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just knowing like that side of it too. It's just so damaging in a relationship and into your intimacy as well.
Yeah, I think it's important that you brought up that women struggle with it too, because it's damaging on both sides. You know, I think when men watch pornography, I think they really damage their view of women. And when women watch pornography, I think they really damage their idea of what a man should be.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and really, it kind of, like we were talking about earlier, it really goes into just over-sexualizing the culture, right? That when that's what you're watching in your free time, now that's what you're thinking about all day. And so it begins to get to this point where you know, your actions and the way that you live your life is wrapped up in, okay, how do I get that?
Yeah.
Right. How do I make that happen in real life? Because it's a fantasy, but you know, how does that fantasy become a reality? And so, it just leads to, you know, things like the hookup culture that we see in our world today. And then on the flip side, right, the church has to acknowledge that too. And so, it's really interesting to watch how the church has tried to navigate this over-sexualized culture. And I think in some ways the church has done a really good job. And I think in some ways the church, you know, kind of can miss the mark at times. That I know I've kind of seen this before, where the church can demonize just sex, right? That sex is the enemy. And what that, it kind of creates this weird story, especially for youth and young adults, because, you know, you're told sex is bad, don't do it. Sex is bad, don't do it. Sex is bad, don't do it. Okay, now you're married, sex is great. Do it all the time.
Total flip side.
And so it becomes so hard for someone to wrap their mind around that, and it winds up creating tension in marriages and everything. And so and you know, even being youth ministers, we talk to our students about like the importance of setting boundaries, but one of the things that I want to try to avoid is students, or not students, but just, you know, young people going through these relationships where there's zero physical intimacy all the way up to their wedding day, and then on their wedding day they feel like, well, time to, you know, go from 0 to 100. Time to just flip a switch and like all of a sudden, like, you know,
that's how you break a hip, man.
Oh, it's dangerous, man. Your body can't take that. Jess, would you mind kind of speaking into, again, since, you know, we minister a lot to youth, what do healthy boundaries look like that can help avoid that while also not getting too close to, you know, falling into sin of premarital sex?
I guess I'll start with sharing a little bit of like our story. Sorry if any of it's too TMI. I'm a pretty open book, so I don't care. But you know, like I definitely grew up in Christian culture where it was like sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad. The only sex talk I ever received was don't do it. And that was it. And so when it came to even like our premarital counseling and everything, you know, there was this big emphasis on still do not have sex until you're married. Like you still need to wait. Like it's still bad until you get there. And then I was told, you know, like on your wedding night, you have to have sex, like have sex on your wedding night because like it's what you're supposed to do. And like I had such a hard time reconciling those two things because I was like, well, if sex is bad or dirty or like makes me unclean, then like why is it suddenly okay in the context of marriage, and like why am I supposed to be able to just be okay with it? And so like we had set up some boundaries. Again, we were really young, so of like we weren't even gonna kiss because I was like, oh, kissing leads to making out leads to other things, and so on, and we're just gonna end up at sex at some point. And so we were just like, we're gonna draw a hard line at not kissing, and that made it even more difficult and more hard when it came to our wedding night, when I was like, I haven't even really kissed you in like a year. That we had set up that for, and it just became this like very awkward thing where we were supposed to go from literally 0 to 100, and I had like a panic attack on our wedding night because I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. I don't know how to reconcile these two things, and no one taught it to me. No one like came alongside me. And in fact, I was almost it took me a really long time to like come out and talk about it because I was shamed for not having sex once we were married, because they were like, oh, like you gotta please your husband or whatever, and I was like, but I was told for so long. And so I think what should have happened looking back now was just having almost not even daily feels like a lot, but like constant conversations about where we were at, where we were struggling, just opening that communication more of just like, instead of having a strict boundary of like no kissing, could it have been more of like, hey, you know, last week we kissed a little bit too long and I think it led to some thoughts that weren't great, and I would like to talk about those things with you, and to, you know, even talk about like, I can't wait until we get there in marriage. Like once we're married, like I can't wait to be there with you. But like right now, like what do we need to do to stop making that the forefront of our mind and the forefront of every time we hang out together? Like, why is that what's coming up? You know, are we lacking in areas of like emotional intimacy or spiritual intimacy where we're trying to fill with physical intimacy?
Yeah, because physical intimacy, and I try to use that language a lot, physical intimacy, rather than just sex, because I think it's good to be physically intimate with someone that you're dating, romantically involved with, but that doesn't have to mean sex.
Yes.
That can even mean just, you know, holding hands. That like this is just saying and showing like, hey, I'm comfortable with you, that like there's physical touch there, right? Even like some people's love language is physical touch. So like someone might even feel loved by just like holding someone's hand. But yeah, like learning how to balance those boundaries, right? Not setting it up a mile away so that you never get close to the line, and then you wind up dealing with all this, you know, baggage and the damage that kind of that negative view of sex can have. But that you're also not toying around with it, getting too close to that line of, you know, and it's man, it's like a tightrope. It's a difficult thing to walk through.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing that you can do, or the best thing that like young people can do in dating relationships, is just lessen the obsession with physical, right? Fall in love with each other for your mental capacities, for your sense of humor, for, you know, just like being able to have and hold a conversation, right? Like those are the things that just, if you fall in love with that, like the physical will totally come, you know? But just the more that you can kind of try to avoid thinking about that and having that be the thing that's at the forefront of your mind, or having that be the thing that's leading and driving your relationship, like I think the healthier of a relationship you're going to have.
It kind of reminds me of this comparison from sex, like being an idol in your life. It's just the culture we live in. It's just something that needs to happen. It's something that's a huge deal in relationships. And it kind of comparing to fasting. You know, like food can be seen, you have to have food in order to survive. And so then when people fast, it's like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, we're going to go a day without food? And it's just this mind shift of, oh no, you can survive without food. You know, so fasting is something that's still achievable, and you can, you know, last the day. And then, you know, knowing the purpose behind fasting is to grow your relationship with God. And so it's almost taking that same concept and applying it to sex and physical intimacy. It's like, okay, you're going to take out the sex part for now to learn patience and to learn obedience and to grow in other ways of physical intimacy without being able to, you know, cross that line until you get married. And so it's kind of like seeing it in a different light, and that same it was kind of helpful. Yeah.
I love that. All right, we got one more topic, and then we'll get into a couple just quick rapid fire questions that some of the young adults sent in from this past Tuesday. But last topic that I just really quickly wanted to touch on was gender roles, right? Because in marriage and dating relationships, this is something that comes up pretty often, even today in our culture, right? Gender is like a buzzword, right? I mean, you have even new words coming out of that: transgender, cisgender, gender fluid, right? And so
hard to keep up.
There's a lot going on in the gender world right now. But yeah, when it comes to a relationship that two people are getting involved in, what do those gender roles look like from a biblical perspective?
Again, I'm just going to speak in the sense of men, because again, I'm a man. I'm not going to speak for the women. You guys are here to do that. You know, like I said, like in the Bible, it says that the man is supposed to lead his wife. And I think, like, not even that I think, I know that looks in the form of like leading in prayer.
Yes.
You're sitting down with your wife and saying, hey, you know what, like let's go over a little reading right now of the Bible. And you start building that habit, because later on in marriage, you know, God wants us to multiply, right? So when you start creating your family and your lovely little ones, you're showing them the importance of having God at the center of a relationship and a family. And you start being that person in the household that, you know, your kids or your wife can come to when they need a sense of guidance, and then it's your job to guide them to God. You know, we're only capable of doing so much, but I think it's important for the man in the relationship to have that responsibility of making sure that he's leading correctly, because if he goes into turmoil, it's going to definitely have a domino effect on the rest of the family. I've actually grew up in a household where, unfortunately, my dad was not present. So my mom had, the responsibility of being both father and mother, and I saw she did a wonderful job, but I can see the struggle in that, because she didn't have, a male figure around to lead us, and I think that's very important, very, very important. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it makes me think, like, scripturally, when I think of gender roles, I just go straight to Ephesians chapter 5, where it says, Paul's writing to the Ephesians, and he says, wives, submit to your husbands. And then he gives the command for husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church, right? And so I feel like when we look at it like that, it kind of combats maybe some of the baggage of gender roles that we go into relationships with. I know, at least like for marriage, right, that looks very different. Like I know in our marriage, when it comes to like even chores around the house, right, like who does the dishes, who does the laundry, who takes out the trash, right, like oftentimes, like, I hope it's okay that I say this, but Jess doesn't like doing dishes.
I hate dishes. I hate dishes, and I hate vacuuming.
Oh, vacuuming. Oh, yes.
Especially when you have fur babies.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we got doggy sheds everywhere. And so, like, when it comes to those things, woman or like a woman taking care of the house, like that was kind of like the traditional mindset. But if I'm looking at how to be a good husband biblically, there's nowhere in the Bible that it says the woman is supposed to do the dishes. There's nowhere in the Bible that says like, the husband cannot vacuum, right? Like these are cultural things that kind of came into it that we just like read into, our relationships. But if the question that I'm asking is, how can I love my wife today? How can I love my wife as Christ has loved me, as Christ loves his church? Well, Jesus, he washed his disciples' feet. Jesus, he in that moment, what he was showing was that he is not above serving his followers. And if Jesus can serve the church, then how much more should I look to serve my wife? Right? And I think even in dating relationships, right, like that, oftentimes we don't have that mindset of how can I outlove the other person? How can I outserve the other person? And so I think if we can get that right, like, man, the gender roles, they kind of just like fall into place, right? That if we're just trying to love one another the best that we can, man, relationships become very easy at that point.
Definitely.
And even loving them without expecting anything in return too.
Come on.
Because that's also important. I think sometimes we say, oh, well, I did this for you, and you bring it back into an argument from 2 months ago. It's like, wait, I did this. But really, that's not what Jesus did. Jesus didn't expect anything in return. And you talked about gender roles, and it's even also too knowing your expectations going into a marriage too. I know I had that expectation where I said, I'm going to clean the house, I'm going to be the one to take care of everything, and I put so much pressure on myself because I had this cultural mindset of I'm supposed to take care of everything because I'm the woman. And he's supposed to take care of this. And so when I didn't see the trash out, then it's, you were supposed to do that because I've been cleaning all day.
Yeah. I think that kind of gets mixed in with culture too.
Yeah.
You know, what we, cause
true. It's true.
Yeah. Cause that's heavy in Hispanic culture, is that the woman's in the kitchen 24/7 while the man is out providing, getting, you know, income and whatnot.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember one of the first times I was at like a big dinner with his family, and I realized that he was the one getting me the plate of food and every other wife was getting the man the food. And I was like, oh no, I did something wrong. I just remember like having that thought of like, oh yeah, like that's there, that's ingrained.
But again, like, my desire is just to serve you and to love you. So if I can get you a plate, like, that's not a dig on my masculinity or on my role as a husband or anything. No, like, I feel more Christ-like when I get to love you in that way.
You're breaking the chains.
I think it's important too to point out though that your other person needs to be doing the same thing, and like, you're not expecting anything of them, but if you're not seeing in them the willingness to like also do the same thing, that should be at least a yellow flag, if not a red flag, that they're not willing to grow with you. Which hopefully you would see before you get married. Hopefully like that's one of the dating litmus tests that you have, is like, is this person willing to grow with me? Because like I said at the beginning, you know, the person we were when we started dating, when we got engaged, and now are 3 different people. And if I was still the person I was when we started dating and he was the person he is now, we wouldn't be on the same page. We wouldn't be able
16
to
and and
that would be illegal. But yeah, using that as a test to see, like, you know, is this person willing to grow with me? And having those conversations, I think, can help. I don't think bringing up like, oh, you didn't do this, but like maybe saying like, hey, it did hurt my feelings, like when I asked you to take out the trash and you didn't do it. What does that? What do you feel in that?
Communication.
So communication key.
Yes, definitely.
I think that's actually going to be a smooth transition to one of the questions, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. So let's go into our mailbag. We got a couple questions from YA coming at us today. So one of the questions that we got is, what does it mean to be unequally yoked?
So basically it just means that you both are not having the same faith and the same walk with God. You know, I think that's probably in a nutshell what it is that you are not equally the same faith, I guess I would say. And so with that, I think it's just really, it can be very difficult. For me personally, I grew up watching relationships in my life who were not equally yoked and seeing the difference between the two, just how difficult it was, like one person saying let's go to church and the other one saying no, like we're not going to go. Or you know, even in our relationship, since we were in a worldly relationship solely based on physical intimacy, then we found Christ together, and even our walks with each other were very difficult, very different. And so it was very straining in our relationship to be, okay, I'm going to church, or I'm doing this, or I'm no longer doing this, and you're still doing this, or vice versa. It's very challenging to be, in addition to the regular relationship issues you already struggle with, to deal with not having the same faith and the same walk with God and the same goal in mind. You just struggle so much in that, you know? The scripture talks about, you know, it uses the language unequally yoked, and it unequally yoked gives this picture of a yoke is something that you would put around 2 oxen, and it was a farming tool, right, that would keep the oxen together so that as they plow the field that they're walking together. But if 2 oxen are unequally yoked, then one is going to be essentially dragging the other one down while the other is trying with everything that it can to push forward. And so it's just like Jess was saying, like it's totally unequal
growth. You're not moving at the same time.
Yeah.
But then we take a look at that same analogy with Jesus. He says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And so we know that, Jesus isn't no punk oxen. He's the one who can drag us all day long. And he has no problem doing that.
Yes.
So yeah. Praise God for that. All right. Last question is how do you effectively work through disagreements in your relationship?
Yeah. I'm passionate about this one. So,
Let's go.
I really feel like, even going back to what I said at the beginning, like knowing yourself first, knowing who you are as a person really helps in these areas, because you know what ticks you off, what your like triggers are, things like that, and things that conversations need to happen between you and the person you're dating or married, but it's hard to have those conversations if you don't even know yourself very well. I think a lot of the times people we deal with, like, they may do the same thing over and over again, and it's like, do you even notice that you're doing that? And I don't think we always do, unless we make a conscious decision to realize, okay, this is something I do because I've just always done it that way, or that's because how my family did it. As a quick example, like, I know early on in our marriage, it was a big thing of like how we fought was different. I was very much like, let's fight it out right here and now. Like, even if yelling comes in, like, we're just going to get through it now and we're going to be done with it. And he was very much like, he needed a minute to step away, so he didn't say anything that he regretted. And in the moment, I don't know that he's thinking, I don't want to say anything I'll regret, so I'm going to go take the dog for a walk. I just felt abandoned. And so
we didn't even have a dog.
It was with Kiara.
You just had the leash.
I gotta go take it.
I gotta do it. And I was like, oh, what an excuse. You're just leaving. But it took a conversation of being like, I appreciate when you stay and fight for this, and him saying, I need a minute when we are talking so that I can get my thoughts together and not say something out of anger. And just knowing that that's how he fights, that's how I fight. When we enter into conflict, we already have that at the forefront of our mind, and it's no longer extra hurt on top of like, I'm feeling abandoned or he's feeling attacked. It's now, okay, we are going into this argument seeking restoration, seeking a resolution, and not just who's going to win.
If I can add to that too, knowing yourself also allows you to check in that moment of, is this a me problem or is this an us problem? Is this bringing me back to abandonment when you used to abandon me, or is this when I used to get abandoned when I was young? And so knowing about yourself really helps in that. Also, another communication tactic we still do is repeating back to each other, because sometimes we'll be kind of like, you don't understand what I'm saying. And he's like, yes, I do. And I'm like, well, repeat it back to me, because it seems like you don't understand. And he'll repeat it back. I'm like, oh, I guess you do understand.
I did understand.
Or I'm like, no, you got this part right, but this part is where I'm really upset about.
Or even trying to force the other to agree with you. I think is it like how you're saying, not trying to go into it with the sense of winning. I'm going to win this. Like, I think that's a huge one too.
Knowing that you're not the enemy. Like, we are each other are together partners, and we are here trying to solve a solution together. You're not my enemy.
That's good, man. This is a long episode, but I hope it's hope it's bringing value to the table. I hope it's preaching to somebody. Whether you're in a relationship right now, you're hoping to be in a relationship, or somewhere in between. We just wanted to minister to you. So thank you for hanging out with us and listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram at VantagePointYA. If you want to come hang out with us on a Tuesday night, we meet at VantagePoint Church, 7 p.m. every Tuesday night. And that's all we got for this episode. So until the next one, we'll see you.